Hi, everyone. Good evening.
Hello, I'm
Welcome
happy.
welcome to the MICAT descriptive section. My name is Karishma. You're welcome to call me Carrie. We are probably going to wait for maybe a couple more minutes to get started. And in the meantime, why don't we begin by just quickly chatting about what led you to applying to MICA? What is the decision behind that? So anybody is welcome to tell me why you're applying to MICA.
Yeah, ma'am, I'm more inclined towards marketing. Found this course to be in line with what I want to do in life. So communication, strategy, event, and more of media and everything, something that's attractive. So I also gave MICAT one, but the paper was really tough. So I want to improve my score in the second attempt.
Oh, okay, very good. I wish you all the best with that.
Thank you.
Anybody else? For those of us just joining us, I asked what makes you apply to MICA? Do I take the radio silence to mean that you haven't decided whether you're applying or not? Okay. Okay, so while we wait for a few more people to join, I will have to say that you'll have to be ready with your microphones and your screens as well if you want, because this is going to be a very interactive session. I will be asking you a lot of questions. And of course, because we're looking at a kind of creative writing and there's no time and possibility for you to share your writing with me, you're going to have to talk about what you're writing. So please be ready to be interactive. This is a safe space. It'll be fun to talk. Yeah, otherwise it's just going to be me talking for a long time, and I don't think anybody wants that. Okay. All right, let's get started. Anyway, people will keep joining in. So once again, welcome to the MICAT Descriptive Section workshop. It's going to be about an hour and 30 to 45 minutes, but we'll see how it goes. I'm keeping a large chunk of the workshop time to listen to what you're writing, because we do have questions directly from the MICAT that we'll be looking at. So I'm not really playing too tightly on the timeline, but let's get started anyway. So here you can see my screen. At any time, if you feel like the font is not clear or anything, just raise your hand through the controls on your desktop, and we're going to get started. So just to walk you through the flow of today's workshop, we're going to look at an introduction to what creative writing entails, what it means to write creatively, and how it's different from fiction writing, nonfiction writing, the long form writing, how you can apply this kind of writing to this exam particularly. We'll be looking at some actual questions, like I said, and also talking very briefly about the short story thing. However, there is a second workshop planned in the series, so that will be solely focused on the short story. So don't worry about that. Let's first start by looking at what the section entails. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to just go through this. All right, I'm assuming that's enough time for everybody. So I'm sure that you're familiar with most of these details. Anyway, I think the more important thing that I want to talk about here is what you need to prepare, because it's a very easy question to ask. What do I need to do? How do I practice for this? So of course you will have to write, but more than that, I think you want to pay attention to these small little details. So the first thing is, of course, having a strong foundation, a sound foundation in the English language. And by that, I mean, do not mistake it to mean that I'm saying you have to have a very high proficiency, but you simply have to have accuracy. Because if you're making simple sentences, complex sentences, but still simple enough, and you're making errors in something as basic as grammar, punctuation, syntax, spelling, things like that, then that's definitely going to bring down your score and the validity of your idea as well. So it's difficult to explain how language makes a difference in the quality of your answer, but because the medium is English, the language is going to matter. So that is something that we cannot ignore. Quick logical thinking. So because these subjects, these topics, the questions that you will get will come from just anywhere in the world. So now, that's not to say that they'll be crazy wacky. They're usually very tame, very familiar. Also things that you can very quickly have an opinion on. So don't worry about the out of context kind of thing that people tend to be worried about. That's not what it is, but it will be on a variety of subjects. I'm not going to lie there. So it could be something related to management, something related to humans and behavior, personality traits. It could be about work or nature, environment, politics, a whole range of things. So of course, because since you've been preparing for all sorts of competitive examinations, I'm assuming you have now become used to reading a bunch of passages anyway, right? And your reading comprehension. So it shouldn't be such a great shock. The thing that you need to manage here is quickly getting into the frame of mind of thinking about the topic that it's at hand. So we'll see where that goes with our examples today. And of course, your writing or typing speed, that matters. If you have a lot of ideas, but you're having trouble putting them down on paper, that is obviously something that you want to fix, because you have all of 25 minutes. I realize that that's ridiculously short. But there is something that helps us, which is that they're not asking you to write long essays. They're asking you to write 2 short paragraphs, and that's it. That's 250 words. That's all they ask. So it's not that bad. Yeah, but I know that it's a little challenging, so we'll see. Okay, standard punctuation, written English, of course. Go over your commas, go over your semicolons, learn how to use, slightly more sophisticated signs of punctuation, like exclamation point, single quotations, em dash and en dash. So all of these, if you want, I can share a list on the Telegram group, and you can just, practice it from there. Otherwise, Google is free. So go ahead and do a search and definitely revise, because you will be surprised at how quickly language comes together, and the correct punctuation and a good punctuation use really just elevates your writing. So don't ignore that. And yes, language to present your idea. So now, of course, I've said that you need sound foundations, but if you are already sorted there and you know that you don't have any problems in grammar, punctuation, spellings, things like that, the next thing then you want to challenge yourself with is the language that you want to learn to present your ideas clearly. So we're talking about discourse markers, words to express argument and opinion, words to present narrative and descriptive writing, the right kind of words to use when you're trying to persuade someone, as opposed to when you're trying to question and challenge someone's point of view. So things like that. It might not be a bad idea for you to look up some examples from IELTS writing, because it's an English proficiency test. It has a lot of good examples of this kind of writing, and the IELTS official guide also has a list of words that you can, learn for this purpose. They have discourse markers and time markers, connectors, things like that. So just good words for you to have in your vocabulary, not just for the test, but for, your overall enhancement of language. And lastly, creating arguments with diplomacy and command. This simply means not starting every argument with nowadays, which if you've been doing any kind of writing or reading lately from, test perspective, you will recognize very easily. A lot of people tend to start their arguments with nowadays, and it's just a little passé. So diplomacy does not mean, I know that diplomacy takes on a slightly negative meaning. I don't know how that happens. I wasn't there when it was happening. But when people say you're being diplomatic, it's almost said like an insult. But I'm here to tell you that that's not correct. When you're being diplomatic, when you're practicing diplomacy, you're essentially just ensuring that nobody in the room gets offended. And by ensuring that, you're simply making sure that everybody's in tune with what you're saying. So instead of saying, oh, I'm just like that, and I say whatever I want, and you can take it or leave it, that's not a great way to win the room. If you want people to pay attention to you, first have to express to them, whether in writing or in speaking, that you are respectful of their attention. So that's what diplomacy is. It's making sure that nobody feels shortchanged in that exchange. And when you practice that kind of writing, it's definitely going to make an impact on the reader, who will then feel like, oh, so this person is actually trying to make an argument without offending everybody and without making, grand judgments. They're trying to skirt around the navigate around a sensitive topic nicely. So I respect that. And it will hold you in good stead. And command, yes. So the one extreme is diplomacy. On the other hand, is also knowing that what you know is what you're going to write. So having the conviction that comes with knowing your argument clearly. If you present an argument, and remember that this is just going to be 200 to 250 words. So once you present your argument, you've said your points, and then you try to go back or backtrack or try and say, yeah, that's true, but also that, you've already lost the point a little bit. Diplomacy is running the world. I don't disagree with that, actually. Diplomacy is running the world. The right kind of people know how to capture the group and keep them there. And that's not a bad thing. Anyway, but I think we will find out what you mean by diplomacy very quickly. So yes, these are a few things that you want to think about. As you might now realize, there is not a lot that we are doing here in terms of new things. I think the thing comes down to, the practice really comes down to making sure your language is accurate. And if that is so, making sure your language is advanced, a little elevated, and making sure that whatever you want to say, you're saying that. You're not beating about the bush. You're not dilly-dallying, you're making it happen, because short amount of time and a very little number of words. So far, so good. Any questions? Anything you would like to add, comment upon? Okay. So let's get started. Here are the specifics. I'm again going to give you a minute to go through these. Okay. Now, so you notice that I've said argument opinion, because sometimes it's framed, the statement is framed like an argument, the other times it's framed like an opinion. Are we taking? No, this is a workshop based specifically on the descriptive section of the MICAT. You can get in touch with us on the Telegram group afterwards. This is not a doubt class. Okay. Right. So yeah, sometimes it's framed like an argument, sometimes an opinion. The summative opinion, I need to explain that. What we mean is that you've done two aspects of the same argument, the for and the against. So you'll be arguing for the same thing and then against the same thing. And then there will be a third statement, which will be different. And you will now be arguing or creating an argument or a supportive statement, something like that, which will have like a summative ideas from the for and the against, but not exactly those points. So you are not allowed to repeat any of the points. You have to come up with entirely different points. Okay, so of course we will see what that means in a minute. And then of course there's a short story, which like I said, we will deal with it in this and the second workshop. The 4 pictures on the right are just for, you know, an idea of what they will look like. If you haven't seen the test, they're just a random array of photographs, 4 of them. They might not be of very good quality. These are high quality, high definition photographs, but they will be just as unrelated as these are to one another. Yes, it's written right there. Argument opinion is 250 to 300 words each. And they ask you to arrange the pictures in a sequence and then write a short story. But of course, the better idea is to first come up with a short story and then see how the elements are lining up and then accordingly arrange them in a sequence. But more on that in the next workshop. Any other questions so far? Okay. Yeah, they're very random images. These are, they make some sense. Can you tell me how they make sense, Gaurav? Tell us how they make sense.
I mean, ma'am, I do think that from the first image, we can create like a story itself, like stop thinking so much, you are breaking your own heart.
Mm-hmm.
And altogether, we can make up a story maybe of, you know, of youth, how they take up stress and so much and how they can, you know, manage their life with balanced diet. I think this is diet, but I'm not sure what it
It's
is.
very close. Look at what the little beads are. You see the white little beads? Where do you see them generally? Anyone?
No, ma'am.
Homeopathy.
Okay. Yeah. So something like that can be made up, but it was very random in the exam. I still remember
Yeah, it's
that.
much more random. I think I should work harder on creating like absolutely an insane album of 4 photographs. Yeah, that should be my homework. Thank you, Gaurav. Is there any specific way or order in which this? No, that depends on you and your story. That's exactly right. Yeah. So, which is in a way a good thing, I guess, because that way at least you have the freedom to put in anything you like at any moment whatsoever. Not that that makes it easier, but I like to think that it does. All right, so we're going to move on to the first 3 questions. Okay, so these questions appear as a set. They need to be thought of as a combined task. And that's what I said earlier as well, that they will be part 1 in which you will be arguing for, part 2 in which you'll be arguing against, and then part 3 in which you will be taking the lessons from those 2 and then applying them to a situation. The more cohesive your argument, the better your output for these 3 questions. So yeah, what I would like to say right from the beginning is the minute you see the statement, start thinking and noting down every single point that comes to your mind. Don't worry about whether it's for or against, because you will have the chance to write both of them down. So don't miss out on any idea that you're getting, no matter how inconsequential you think it is, write it down. You never know when you might be able to turn it into something more substantial. The first question will ask you to present 3 arguments in favor, and you must make 3 independent arguments. So that means that you cannot have an extension to the first point. These 3 have to be individual points. How we can make it happen, we have an example coming up in just a few minutes. The second question will ask you to take the same statement, but now argue against the 3 statements. And they should also be completely 3 independent points. And then the third idea asks you for 3 ideas. Again, I don't know what the obsession is with 3, but that's what we have. And on a different statement that uses the theme of the earlier statement. So what I like to say is you want to you want to treat it a little bit like you would treat a reading comprehension question. And by that, I mean that I like to tell the students that you want to identify 3 elements of any writing piece that you're looking at. So the first element is the subject. So like, is it history? Is it literature? Is it politics? Is it art? Is it language? Is it music? You get the idea. Identifying the subject will very quickly activate your brain into thinking about that topic. So now the minute I say music, now I'm thinking about my favorite bands, I'm thinking about what kind of music I like, I'm thinking about what I was listening to earlier this evening, things like that. So it activates the context. And that's so helpful when you have to come up with 3 ideas, and then 3 ideas, and then 3 ideas. So activate the schemata, so to speak. So yes, the first thing is subject. The second thing is a scope. So by scope, we mean how far is this argument going? Is it going very far? Is it going into the depth of anything? Or is it staying topical? So I'll give you an example. There could be a question asking you to define the term terrorism. And there could be a question asking you, can terrorism be ended? Can you see the scope of these 2 statements and how different they are? Do you want me to repeat the questions? Have people just switched on, joined the workshop and left? Okay. Yeah, so the first one is define the term terrorism. And the second is, can terrorism be ended? My question is, can you see how different the scope of these 2 statements is? Okay, Aditya, do you want to explain or elaborate a little?
Defining terrorism, I think that's a lot more scope. We can just try to put in our own understanding of what it is and then finally dwell deep into it. But ending terrorism, I think, is more about arriving at solutions, which is, I think, scope is lesser to, you have to find practical solutions that can be implemented. We cannot, again, go on with an over understanding of what it can be done. So that's what I think.
Okay, interesting. Does everybody agree with Aditya, or does anybody have a different perspective?
Hi, ma'am.
Hi.
So what I feel is terrorism is pretty much, the definition part of it is on the surface level, because, you know, it's also subjective. What terrorism is for me may not be the same for you. But whereas when it comes to how can it be ended, it's more like, you know, diving deep into the subject, because it involves the analytical thinking part of it, because you need to come up with solutions as to how something can come to an end. It's different from what it is. So that's the, you know, difference.
Yeah, I have to lean towards Akash's answer more than Aditya. I'm sorry, but yeah, that's absolutely correct. That, you know, when you say define terrorism, you can just take a very topical definition of terrorism, which will be applicable to all terrorism. And then, of course, when you go deeper, you can give more versions of it. But defining the term terrorism, causing something to feel terrorized, you know, exploiting someone's, not someone's or some things, you know, boundaries. But when you think about, can we end terrorism? Now that is a whole different can of worms. And before you can even begin thinking about ending terrorism, you first have to identify which terrorism, where, for whom, and from whom. So it just becomes an absolutely layered argument. And that's what I mean by separating scope from the subject, because sometimes statements will be very topical and sometimes they might not be. So you want to be able to figure this out before you launch. NK says, 1 is a basic introduction, the good, the bad, everything could be included. But when we are forced to think about making something end, it has a more negative connotation, sure. And yeah, absolutely. And it's much more widespread as well. So that is absolutely valid. Great. So I hope that you understand the idea behind identifying the scope. So you've got the scope, you've got the subject, and then you want to think about the density. So the density is about language. The subject and the scope are about the idea. Okay, so what I mean by that is that when you're thinking about writing about something that is fairly simple, fairly straightforward, you also will not want to complicate it with your language. However, on the other hand, if you're looking at something which is a little more sophisticated, a little more finesse is needed, you want to think more in terms of the nuances of that topic, then you do want to ideate it in a way that is justified. What I mean is that instead of just going for definitions, this is that, this is this, this is how we do this, is what it means. Here in the more complex ideation, you might want to think about how to present your opinion, how to support it with an example, how to take up alternative opinions and do the same thing with that as well, justify it or not justify it, question, challenge it. So the density of language should ideally be informed by the scope. I hope that that's clear enough. Otherwise, it will be in a couple of minutes when we look at an example. Okay, so this is what I had in terms of introduction. I didn't want to do too much to it because I know that this is a very individual, task, and everybody will be looking at it differently. Some people might find it rather simple, some might find it a little daunting. So I didn't want to give too much background into it, and I just wanted to launch directly into the question. So here is the first example. The first example includes the first two questions, 3 in favor, 3 in against. Laziness, how can it benefit society? This is an actual MICAT question. I don't know if some of you recognize it already, but yeah. So I'm going to stop talking for a couple of minutes and give you a few seconds. All you want to do is try and note down 3 independent points in favor of and 3 independent points in against it. Even if you're able to do just one or the other, that's fine. I'll give you a couple of minutes. All right. Anybody who's ready with their arguments can. Okay, Akash, why don't you tell us?
Okay, so for the topic, as in how can it benefit the society? Well, it could foster creativity because people would want to get their tasks done in a much quicker way. So they would be more creative as to how could they reduce the time to do a particular task. And my second point would be innovation, because when creativity is fostered, it directly leads to innovation, and we would come up with something like automation maybe that could enable the it would be like practically executing the creativity part of it. Third point would be, it could be saving up time, and that could lead to a better balance in life, because let's say if some work is a very monotonous kind of a work and people would want to finish it faster so that they can get things time for doing other things in life. All right, coming to the against part of it, number one, it could lead to a reduction in the accuracy levels, because people are not really doing it with their heart, they're just doing it for the sake of doing it, and there's no guarantee that the whatever they've tried the shortcuts, it may not lead to the right results. Second point would be, there would be no leader, because nobody would want to take up the initiative. Everyone would want to just do their part of it and get out of it as soon as possible, and when there's no leader, there would be a lot of chaos and bad decision making. The third point would be, nobody would find joy or satisfaction in life, because again, there's no intent with what we are doing, we are just doing it for the sake of it. And that could also lead to apocalyptical situations, because people may not find the purpose of living a life. Because right now, as in you are teaching, we are listening for doing well in the exam, but let's say that you just wanted to spread some knowledge and get done with it as soon as possible, and we just took the knowledge just for the sake of exams and not for the overall development. So in the end, none of us would benefit, and we would question our existence. So something on those lines. Thank you.
Wow, okay, Akash, I think you tapped into some really deep, existential questions right at the end of both the sets. Excellently done. That's very good. Thank you for sharing. Especially the last point that really got me thinking. Yeah. Okay. Who else? Who's next?
Ma'am, I think for favor, I could only think of two arguments, and for against, I could think of at least three.
Okay.
So
Let's hear them.
in favor, I think I'll agree with the person who just spoke with me,
Akash.
spoke before me, yeah, Akash. So the first one would be efficiency. I mean, the lazy people, they always tend to do a thing with less amount of labor and more amount of efficiency. So the first one would be efficiency and less amount of labor. And second would be, I would say that sometimes being stress-free, and they are talking about society, how can it benefit? So sometimes when you are stress-free, you take up a leave, or you just, for the sake of being lazy for a day, that really opens up your space, give your mind some space to think about a lot of things. And in a way, it also manages the stress. And for against, I have three arguments that lazy people, they have the tendency to postpone things. So they try to let's just do the work tomorrow. And the second thing would be, when you are lazy about the things that you are doing in your day-to-day life, your mind tend to become a little sluggish, and it operates maybe with not with optimal capacity that is required. And the third one would be, not being disciplined, of course, comes with laziness, and you might not be very effective leader if you want to be in a serious management position, and you want to tell people and manage things in a very efficient and effective way. That might not be a very good point if being lazy. Yeah.
Yes, very good. These are all absolutely valid as well. Especially the ones about against. I think you had some very distinct points, each one of them. So that's a good job done. And I'm pretty sure that if you spend a little more time on it, you will also come up with a third point in favor as well. Although I will say, yeah.
I have one question actually. I was not very sure that in these questions, were we supposed to give a lot of explanation for the points we are giving, or be very precise and just 2 or 3 lines?
coming to that, thank you for that question. I was just coming to that because these are only points that they're asking, they're not asking for explanation, examples, or elaboration. Your task becomes a little bit easier because you just have to write those 3 points. Now, of course, if they've asked for 250 words each, you are going to give a little bit of detail. So, for example, to the point saying that lazy people tend to procrastinate a lot more, right? For the against point you said. So you're not just going to say lazy people tend to procrastinate and that's it. You're not going to leave it at that, right? You did explain a little bit. So that's how much you're going to write in the answer as well. And that will take you up to 75 words, 75 to 100 words. And that's all you need for each point. Do they appreciate it if we connect points? No, they have to be distinct and separate. So don't connect them, just make them as their individual points. All right. Yep. All right. Who else wants to go?
Yeah, I would like to state my points.
Yes, Rina.
I have written just for the against part.
Okay, go ahead.
Laziness may lead to complacency and hence less competitiveness, and innovation in a society cannot occur without competitiveness amongst peers. That's the first point. Second point would be laziness may lead to sedentary lifestyle and health issues, causing much larger of the population to become unhealthy and not being able to contribute positively in the growth of the society. Third point, laziness may cause people not to put their best efforts in completing certain tasks, be related to their personal life or professional life. This overall decreases productivity, but also one's quality of life.
Very good. In fact, thank you, Rina. These were fantastic and very succinctly put. So good job there. All you will need to do in the real exam is add 1 sentence each to each of these points, and I think you'll be fine with the word limit as well. And in fact, I want to say that the last point where you say that...
Okay, so I would need to write 1 more line to explain my points.
Yes. 1 line would be needed because otherwise I think you might fall short on the word limit.
So I'll have to be careful about the word limit.
Yes, I would advise all of you to keep the word limit in mind because whenever a test or any such competitive exam prescribes a word limit, they want you to at least meet it and then go over if you want to. But that is an inside limit that you want to meet.
Okay. So we would not need to write any examples for this, right? We just need points and a little bit of explanation of that point.
Yes, we just need points, no examples here. The example will come in the third one because that is essentially you making up a situation.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So what I was saying was that your last point, Rina, about lazy people not being productive and it will affect productivity, but also the quality of life. So that's 2 points.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's how nitpicky you want to be able to get with your points because that's what I said, that don't club 2 points together, have every single adjective, every single noun and verb deserves its own point. And that's how you will be able to get 3 massive chunks of points.
Okay.
For and against.
Got it. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
I'll keep that in mind.
We do have time for 1 more if anybody's feeling brave.
Ma'am, may I add 1 point?
Yes, please, Neeraj.
So for and against, there have been hundreds of points and most of the points have been against. But I would like to add 1 point in for that, laziness in a person or laziness at a personal level can, bring in more and more employment for the entire society. Like if we think in this perspective of society, most of the apps like Swiggy and Zomato kind of apps, it can promote a culture of getting more things outsourced. And apart from that, one other thing what I would like to add is laziness can somewhere trigger easiness in the society.
Do you mean convenience?
Convenience, instead of going to different places or running marathon like Chandra sir, people can hire someone on Twitter and Healthify and get these things done at the easiness of their home, and it can also promote easiness. So as far as society is concerned, like how can it benefit society? It can bring in more jobs for the unemployed, and the last point which I would like to add is it can make circulation of money. laziness can somewhere bring down the money into the pool of people, and it can be a very beneficial thing for the society as such.
That's fantastic, Dheeraj. Thank you for sharing. Because I think what you've done is you've taken the discussion from a very individual, personal, segment to socioeconomic impacts of laziness, and that's fantastic. And that's what's brilliant about these questions, is that everybody will take a different route, or not everybody, but a lot of people will take different routes to it, because what the word might trigger in your mind, you're not able to anticipate that, and that comes from years and years of you thinking a certain way, you being a certain way. In fact, if some of you are lazy, then you will immediately start thinking about how this is good for you, and some of you who are extremely active will immediately start thinking about how you dispel laziness in your lives. So that's great.
I have had many points against, but I just thought as if, why not to speak for and bring in some new perspective for.
Sure.
And
Yes.
I just got that example of Chandra sir. I won't be writing it in exam as such.
Yes, of course.
But
I didn't know Chandra ran marathons. I'm gonna
He's
quiz
a
him
gold
on that
medalist
later.
in marathon. He's a gold medalist in marathon.
Wow, that is
Champion
fantastic.
across this in Mumbai circle. People admire him. But we have got an alternative to it, like Twitter and Healthify. So I just thought as if for this society it can be very much beneficial.
Yes. Yes, I mean, there's so many ways of thinking about the idea of laziness as well. I mean, so I'm glad to see that all of you are sticking to the standard meaning of laziness, because that simplifies things for you as from the exam point of view, because we don't have a lot of time. You don't want to get too deep into the discourse of lazy and what it means to be lazy, and how lazy is actually a misnomer, and how what you term as laziness can actually be an inherent fear of failure and things like that, which I think it's only my brain that works that way. So ignore all of that. We're just going to move on. But
Ma'am, I have a doubt.
yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
Let's suppose that we are asked to write 3 points, right? And somehow we don't come up with the third point. So in such a scenario, is it okay that, is it acceptable that we write an example, like a last resort? Instead of not writing anything,
Right.
writing something.
Right. I honestly don't have an accurate answer on that. I'm going to have to do some research and get back to you. But yes, at this time, I will say that to make it the third point, you can write an example. Don't leave it blank. There is no negative, that's for sure.
Or we can
or maybe we can just
Is that
maybe yeah, actually I was just adding to what her doubt was. Can we just like in a situation where we are stuck and we don't get, like, we're not getting any third point, we can just use our against point and reframe it into something positive?
Sure. So at this time, what I would suggest is to stick with what your brain is finding easier to do, and do that. So if it's finding easier to drum up an example, do that. And if it's easier to reframe an against point and make it into a 4-point, do that. Because right now the time would be your enemy. It wouldn't be so much the examples.
Ma'am,
yeah,
I wanted to ask something. So for instance, in my 4-point, I had this point related to innovation, and that could save up time and maintain productivity. But on the other hand, for against, I was just thinking about the loss in productivity. Like, let's say people are lazy and they don't tend to do. I mean, am I like allowed to self-contradict myself in for and against? Because technically, for and against means contradictory behavior. So
absolutely.
Are we allowed to self-contradict?
You are fully allowed to do that. What I would say to, sort of try and show that you're not saying the same point from two different sides of the coin, kind of to fool them, is to use different words. So if you say that laziness promotes productivity because people would want to get out of the work very quickly, and that's why they might innovate, don't say the same words and say that laziness would be hampering productivity because people might not do the same quality of work. Don't use productivity in both the statements, because then it's going to become like a mirror statement. But by all means, reframe it in a way that it becomes a point, but it also does not use the same words. Does that? Yeah. Okay. Doric said, ma'am, is there some sort of framework you recommend to deal with this type of questions? What do you mean by framework? Do you mean like No, I don't know what you mean by that. Could you explain? Okay, maybe they're writing. Okay, Doric, if you are with okay, like PESTLE framework of sorts. Honestly, I don't know what a PESTLE framework is. Is that like an acronym that exam prep?
Oh, it's political, economical, social. He's trying to ask whether we can bring that into the argument.
Who came up with PESTLE? I've never heard of this. Where is this from?
So usually some people just recommend that, we could use such acronyms and think on these
Sure. No, I mean, we have a lot of
ideas, like it could be on the lines of social,
well.
technology, environment.
And oh, okay. Well, no, I don't have such a framework because I think frameworks are a little limiting because there are these approaches that we also have in writing, like STAR approach and point approach and things like that. That's new one and easy to remember. Yeah, sure. But what I recommend as a teacher of creative writing, I've been doing that for, several years, is to let your mind do a little more free walking and free thinking instead of sticking to a framework, because I feel like the more you stick to the framework, especially in such specific types of questions and tasks, the more identical answers you produce as public. So that's my 2 cents. I don't really work with frameworks. I think it's a better idea to think about how you deal with arguments and how you present your arguments on the whole, and then take that inspiration and apply that to your argument making here as well. But yeah, framework, not so much. Sorry, though, if you were hoping for one. Okay, so let's move on now. So you're welcome. So the second example, that's going to be a third question, which is suggesting 3 ways a young manager could ensure that laziness could be used as a tool for organizational success. So I do have some tips that are there on the next slide. Before that, I just want to give you a free rein to go crazy and think about how you will argue this. And remember that you only have to suggest 3 ways. So
yes, ma'am. So but it says we can't repeat, ma'am. So for example, we have spoken about efficiency, creativity, innovation, and all that. Yeah. So how can we come up with something that is not repetitive? Because these are in line with managerial and organizational goals.
So yeah, what they mean by repetition is that don't lift a for question or a for point or an against point and directly put it here.
Okay. Into context to it. Okay, sure. Yeah.
Because now you're looking at a scenario.
And that way, I think the first thing will be to increase productivity by, because lazy people are going to be more efficient. They want to get the work done as soon as possible.
Right. So now instead of using efficiency, productivity, things like that, which you've already used in the point, think about what this would look like when you apply to the real world. So to my mind, the first thing that comes up is 4-day weeks, 4-day work week.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So start with that, or like start with flexi hours or flexi working or blended or whatever it is. They call it hybrid.
Yeah, sure.
All right. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes once again. Yeah.
Apart from this 4-day work week, a manager can also, think of, layoffs and other such things like in downsizing an organization and getting best out of people. Like it can also.
How does that use laziness though? Because you have to use laziness as a tool. You don't have to eliminate laziness, remember? If you downsize
in the sense like manager would have a better, excuse to put in, like the employees are lazy. So just, it can trigger some competition. Lazy tag can create a competition between the and it can become a good HR excuse.
I'm not sure I follow what you're trying to say here. Maybe try and put it in different words.
As an example, I can say that if there's some HR can easily cut off people or lay off people in the name of laziness. Like No,
That's what I'm saying, that let's not do that, because that is eliminating laziness. But your question is specifically asking you to use it as a tool for success. So that means keep the lazy people, but figure out a way to use their laziness for productivity. If you get rid of them, then you are forfeiting on the question. Yeah, so you have to be very careful about answering the question correctly.
should be the ammunition. Okay. I just got.
Ma'am, I'm not sure if I followed the complete narrative because I joined late. But as you mentioned about the psychological facts, that maybe they are facing some barriers because they are not confident enough to go through with the work and everything. So that can be used in an organization where managers or HRs could help the person get over it and then move the team forward. Maybe that side of story we can think about in this question.
Sure. Yes, you can do that. Although you will have to find a way to turn that into organizational success. Because here's the thing that we want to keep in mind all the time here is that they're asking you for very specific tasks. And the task fulfillment factor is going to be very high here. And even though you end up writing a really cogent and persuasive argument, talking about human behavior, human psychology, things like that, if it doesn't come back to the question and what they're asking you in the STEM, I'm afraid that that might still cost you points. So as dreary as it might be, we're going to keep coming back to the question exactly what it's asking and making sure that we're addressing that with each and every point out of the 3. So what you're saying, Mohit, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So what you're saying, Mohit, is on the right lines. But you do want to bring it ultimately back to how it will lead to organizational success. So maybe spend a minute thinking about that.
Sure. Thanks.
Oh, yes, Akash. Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay, so my first point would be it gives the manager a chance to draw a balance between accuracy and production. So somebody with a lazy attitude may compromise slightly on the accuracy part, but would balance with the production part of it. But somebody alongside with this person that person could maintain the production, the accuracy. So what I'm trying to say is this lazy person, it's like a dual team kind of a situation where a lazy person is attached to a person who is slow. The slow person can manage with the accuracy part of it, and the lazy person can contribute with the production part of it. And in that way, you're not totally compromising on the accuracy or the production, and you're able to meet your targets. As a manager, he'll be able to justify that he's able to meet his targets. Second point would be it would give him a chance to form a quick reaction team to special projects or urgent projects, because they would have immediate deadlines, and these lazy people, they would be aware of all the shortcuts that could be used to get the work done. The third point would be it gives manager a chance to come up with creative solutions, because again, these lazy people, they could be placed on the developmental front or the automation part of it, wherein they come up with creative solution as to how time could be reduced and the work production could be increased.
Okay. Okay, good. I have a couple of notes on that. The first thing is try and this is to everybody, not just Akash, but try and switch up all of your he, him pronouns with they, them pronouns. I hope that you're aware of the change and the upgrade in the English language, where we don't just use the male pronouns to refer to all people, we use they, them. Do we know about this or yes? Okay, good. Yeah. So so you said manager. Yes, I agree. Although to themselves, because oneself is not a word. We don't really use oneself anymore. Just say they, them. So like the manager that Akash was talking about, instead of saying the manager will take care of his team, I will say the manager will take care of their team. And their and they, them in this case is singular. That's how we use it. Okay, so Akash, the other note that I had was when you said slow person, slow is actually used as a descriptor of somebody who's not mentally fully developed. So I don't know if that's the word that you wanted to use. I think what you could use is somebody who's more articulate or somebody who's more methodical. Now, the thing with people who are methodical is that they tend to be a little more well-paced because they take more time in giving attention to detail, whereas somebody who's lazy would want to get things done very quickly or find a shortcut. So putting people who are methodical with people who are lazy might give you a more productive combo. And the, excuse me, the third thing, right. And the third thing was try and avoid using language like these lazy people because it makes them sound like they're lepers or something. You just want to say lazy people or somebody who's lazy. You know, use it as a kind descriptor instead of a categorization like these poor people or these, you know, certain whatever. Yeah. Okay, no problem. But great. Yes, that's a good start. Anybody who's coming up with more ideas which are directly you know, examples instead of explaining how you would get there?
Yeah, ma'am, I have actually 3 points.
Yes, go ahead, please.
The first one that I've taken it directly from the favor points. I mean, what I had in favor. So that would be the stress management and taking break from some discussions for some discussions. And that could do 2 things simultaneously. Like we can have conversations about like fostering innovation, and it can also be something of a bonding exercise for the team.
Yeah.
So discuss. So this is something that I took in organization sense. So second one would be
Isn't that 2 points already?
No, ma'am, I just included one. I wanted to ask whether I can do it in 2 points. Like,
yes, you very much can. That's
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah. But anyway,
So-
please go ahead.
one is stress management and fostering innovation, and second one is bonding. It can be a very good bonding exercise.
One is stress management, second is innovation, and third is bonding. There you have it.
Okay. Oh, I have actually 2 more points.
Great.
Should I tell?
Yes, go ahead,
those
please.
points?
Yes, yes.
So if someone is lazy and is heading the organization, they would definitely would want to get to know their peak hours, like peak working hours. So they'll choose some time slots, and in that way they can bring a little amount of discipline while doing the work, and they can their mind can work in optimal capacity as
Yes.
well. This is what I think. And the third one would be that it is very easy to motivate people, those who are lazy, because you'll tell them that you work up for 2 days continuously and take a day break for 3 days, rest of the 3 days. And I think that's a little bit funny as well, because that's what I do and try to do, but I don't know whether it's applicable or not.
Yeah, I can tell you from my personal experience, it is definitely applicable. I work Mondays and Tuesdays, and I don't know how I get through Mondays, but Wednesday is off for me. I mean, I just decide to take an off because I work for myself. And then I work Thursday and half of Friday, and then I'm off for the entire weekend. And so, yes, and I'm not even lazy. I just don't like working that much. Like, I don't see the point. Anyway, good. These are good examples. And you can also see how one kind of births the other. Like if you're thinking about innovation, if you're thinking about increasing productivity, how are you going to make that happen for lazy people? The first thing you want to make sure is that the lazy person is present to work. So how do you make them present for work? You tell them, okay, you just have to work for a couple of days and then you have an off day. And that's how. So it's a great mental exercise. You can do this for a number of things yourself as well. But what I would say here is to keep going this on this kind of thinking pattern. This is great.
Okay, ma'am.
Who's next?
Yes, ma'am, I have 2 points
Let's hear them.
which are quite similar to what everyone before me has said.
Mhm.
A manager can put in place measures that rewards employees basis the efficiency of their work and not the number of hours they put in. In such a scenario, a lazy person would be incentivized to find best ways to achieve more within less time.
Mhm.
Second, since a team consists of individuals with different qualities, such as an employee can be lazy but more creative, or an employee can be hardworking but more restricted in their way of thinking.
Mhm. So what would
So the manager can group these people together, the lazy employee with the hardworking one for projects, to get the best results, so that they can complement each other, and one could compensate for the lack of creativity, and one can compensate for the lack of the work
Right.
needed.
Yes, good. Both are valid and both are quite distinct. So good work here. Yes.
Thank you.
Ma'am, I had a question.
Yeah.
So like for this for and against of it, again, we almost, I guess all of us were talking on the lines of productivity, innovation and all these things. And again here, though we are trying to use maybe different words or slightly different ideas, but again when you try to generalize it, it again boils down to innovation, productivity, accuracy and all these things. Like, isn't this considered a repetition, or like is
It
it just
is.
a use of
It
words?
is. So remember I told you how not to use the same word. So what we will do right now as a mental exercise is to look at the chat box. I'm going to type a word here, which we have used already. And why don't you come up with 4 to 5 different words? No, I mean, one person can come up with one word, and then let's see how far we get with that. So the first word here is productivity. Use words, phrases, expressions. I don't mind as long as it's not the word productive or productivity.
One thing more that I was about to mention.
Okay, sure.
Like a tag of laziness can somehow, means a manager can use this tag of laziness and can get the people at a cheaper rates. Like, laziness can somehow be used in employing at lesser wages or
are you assuming in that, Dheeraj, that people who are lazy will have it on their resume that we're lazy and we're okay with being paid less?
not that way, but a manager can use this tag of laziness and get the people work at a lesser.
I mean, see, if you write it as a point, I don't know if they will accept it or not, because it is a point and all they want is points. But I will say from a humane perspective, I wouldn't agree with this. I think this is a little unethical, that instead of, people who are lazy are not lazy by choice. It's just how they're wired. And there have been studies on that, by the way. People who procrastinate, they're wired like that. People who are lazy are wired like that. People who are type A or very active are also wired like that. And people who are, early birds and night owls and crepusculars and things like that, they're all wired like that. That's just how their body functions. So for a manager to underhandedly take a quality that a person cannot change, they can only manage, and use it to pay them less is actually quite unethical in my eyes.
That only I tried to only confirm from you that can we use this as or not?
No. Yeah, you don't need to. You see, I mean, stick to the things which are more principled, more, logically and ethically sound, and you will just come up with a better point that way. Yeah. Okay, everybody, tell me a couple of synonyms for productivity, please. Where'd you go? Everybody, look at the chat box. Should I start you off? I will give you more efficient output. Okay, efficiency, mastery. Well, productivity and mastery are two different things, Smriti. So I don't know if that really conveys the same meaning. An increase in what? An increase in? Profitable, beneficial, yeah. Increase in the rate at which a task is performed. Efficacy, very good, although one C in the second, but yes, capacity. Yeah, good. So there you have it, right? This is how you do it in your exam as well. Let's do one more word that we tended to repeat. Innovation. Give me different ways of saying innovation. Okay, keep going. New ideas, doing things differently. Uniqueness, sure. Unconventional approach, good, yes. Okay, so there you are. You've got 4 or 5 new ways of talking about innovation already. And that's what you can do as a mental exercise for yourself when you switch from the first 2 questions to the last one. All right, so before we move out of the box, correct, very good, guys. So before we move on to the next one where I have some tips for you, anybody else who would like to add any ideas from either example 1 or example 2, you're welcome to do so at this point. No? Okay.
Ma'am, for example 2, apart from flexible working hours and hybrid working pattern and paid holidays, like all of the others have said, I thought of a point, creative rooms, like with bean bags and laid out seating arrangements so that people are not restricted to like desk and chairs, because that, brings out, like, lazy people prefer, like when mostly I prefer working from my bed.
Perfect. Yeah, absolutely. Floating offices and, a blended office design. So yeah, that is definitely true. In fact, if I may, I have a bit of an example to share. So like I said, I'm not lazy, so I like working. Flexibility is the word, I think. Yes, flexibility, but also having a bit of an open concept office, just like we have open concept kitchens these days. And they are definitely something that people love. So when I used to teach at British Council, we used to have floating desks, so we never sat at the same place twice. But we also had these cocoon-like structures where there were super comfy sofas facing one another, and there was a nice coffee table in the middle, and there were 3 or 4 of them on the floor. And you could just go into one of them and just kind of get lost with your laptop, put your feet up, have a snack, have a nap even. It was famous for finding, teachers who do 7 to 9 p.m. and 9 to 11 p.m. classes, just napping there. So yeah, and it really made a difference because people were just happy afterwards. So that's definitely a great idea, and it informs directly to what laziness is, which is, it's just something that you are built with. It's not something you need to fight against. Yeah, so good. That was a good idea. Okay, if there's nobody else, shall we move on? Okay. So arguing for the idea, focusing on the nouns and the verbs. What I mean by that is sometimes when we look at a statement on the whole, we tend to ignore the individuality of what the words are saying. And that example I showed you here when I said that think about how laziness can be used as a tool for success in the organization. Don't veer too far off from that idea, because you ultimately have to answer that exactly. Similarly, in the first point as well, benefiting society. So 3 things: laziness, benefit, and society. These are the three elements you want to focus on when you're writing your points. So nouns and verbs, adjectives, adverbs, all of the important points really. Question and challenge, descriptive words. So if there is a description there, like laziness, that is a descriptive word, right? It's an adjective. So in fact, it's a noun, but it defines a quality that you can turn into an adjective, which is calling someone lazy. So you have to challenge it. And by challenge, I don't mean, how can you mean lazy? No, I mean, think about what the word lazy means to you as a person. And there you will have 2-3 examples. So like, I think Rina was the one who just gave us the idea of having sofas and bean bags and stuff. So, I mean, whoever it was, that was a great idea. And it came personally from them because they said that I like to work from my bed. So that is a great way of using a personal example and challenging what laziness means to you. And there was no negativity in the way that they said that I like to work from the bed. That's just true for them. So that's a great way of getting back to the meaning that the word carries for you. Avoid using personal examples. Yeah, so what I mean is, don't say this is what I do. Take what you do and turn it into a generic statement. Okay, thanks, Smriti. And thanks, Reena, for pointing it out. Yeah, so say that some people might like to work from the comfort of their bed. Instead of saying, I like to work from my bed, so this is my point. Instead, turn it around and put the focus onto the other people and say, a lot of people like to work from the comfort of their bed. You know, some other people might not see the comfort in it, or might say that, oh, doesn't it hurt your back and whatever. But there are people who love sitting in bed and working on their laptops. So something like that. So instead of using personal examples, utilize them and turn them into points that apply to a larger public. And yes, of course, anything too extreme. So I'll go back to an example that somebody said about, you know, using laziness as a weapon to downsize people. I don't think that's a great idea. So nothing too extreme. Remember not to infuse your answers with too much negativity. Even though you are arguing against an idea or for an idea, keep it as generic as possible, because you don't want, see, humans will be reading these answers, right? And humans are susceptible to opinion and emotion. So you don't want somebody to get so triggered by emotion that they forget that they're marking an answer, you know, human error. So instead, keep it light. Arguing against an idea. So try to highlight all possible positives. Oh, sorry, I meant to say negatives here. Why have I said positives? Sorry about that. I think I have I switched? Yeah, I have switched to descriptions. I'm very sorry about this. But anyway, it does apply to both of the ideas, so it's fine. So yes, trying to highlight all the positives for when you're arguing for and against when you're arguing against. So this informs back to my first point when I said that the minute the ideas start forming in your head, even if you think that, oh no, this is not useful or this is too small, write it down. Because like I just pointed out with someone, they had 3 points in their main point. And that is what will happen, because you are thinking, you are studying right now, you are, you know, you're involved in a process which is making you constantly think and question and challenge and produce. So you're not in a very static state of mind. You are in a productive state of mind. So don't be surprised if your 1 point includes 3 or 4 new points. Write them all down. Think of how it impacts people in a good way or a bad way. So in the example of laziness, the impact that we were talking about was maybe inaccuracy, that, you know, if somebody's lazy, their sole focus is going to be on getting the job done and getting out of there. So they might not be so, you know, concerned with how good their work is. So that is something that, that is a way that it will impact their work or impact the people around them. And yeah, that's a good way of thinking about it. And trying to split one idea into 2 when possible. So I've given you a couple of examples of that already. Anything that you would like to add from, you know, based on our discussion so far? Anything that comes to your mind? Now's the time. No. Okay. So giving suggestions, this is about the third part of the question. Yes.
Yeah, I have one thing because I gave the MICAT one, so
Mhm.
I just wanted to share with everyone else as well.
Yes, please.
So the word which was, it was very very. I mean, I couldn't thought of anything when I read the phrase that was given, and then what happened was, then I switched to the last question where they asked, so how can this confusion can benefit the organization in achieving their success? So then I could understand, okay, the confusion might be, they might be using this confusion as in a stepping step for the organization
Stepping stone.
success. So sometimes that might, it can work for someone if they get confused, so they can go to the last question and they can they can understand what they are trying to ask.
Yes, work backwards to your top. Yeah, that is true. That's something that a lot of the time I see happening in reading comprehension questions as well, that sometimes people find it helpful to go look at the question, see what's coming, and then come back to the passage and only read with the intent of finding the answer. And I don't knock it because I think it's effective for some people. So yes, for sure. What was your, do you remember your statements, if I might ask?
Yes, ma'am, it was, I can't, forget that statement because it is very weird. I had never heard of it.
Okay.
So it was confusion, contracts, chaos.
Oh, right. Confusion, contracts, chaos. Yes. Mhm.
Yeah.
I didn't want to include it in this class because it was a bit too out there, but I was going to give you that as a home task. Right.
Okay.
Yes. Confusion, contracts, chaos. That is great. Yeah, we're not going to spend time on that right now, but we will definitely come back to that one. Okay, so in giving suggestions, trying to create situations where the statement can be fitted in using the prompt fully. So I've given you an example of how to do that. We'll do it again with another example. Don't leave out any elements, relevant details, plausibility, and avoid over justification. Yeah, so over justification is when you're going round in circles, giving too many details, and it'll start to sound like maybe you yourself don't believe in the idea, which is not true. So give the introduction and then give one explainer and you're fine. Each point, I mean. Right, moving right along to the last bit, and we're right on time as well. Okay, here's another real MICAT question. Oh, sorry, I forgot to remove this when I was making the presentation. But yeah, so environment is a resource meant for consumption. You have to argue for, you have to argue against, and then suggest 3 ways in which young professionals could stay off the environment controversy. Look at how they've changed the entire dialogue here. We're first looking at whether we are, this is obviously an ethical conundrum, right? Everybody, I hope, sees that it's an ethical conundrum. Okay. So environment is a resource meant for consumption. Of course, we're going to start thinking about, oh, what do we mean by environment and consuming? What do we mean by resource? How are we thinking about consumption in terms of individuality, in terms of humans, and in terms of the planet, and blah, blah. And then suddenly they're calling it a controversy, and they're saying, let's forget about whether it's right or wrong, forget about whether it's ethical or not. You just have to tell me, young professionals, that's element 1. Second, stay off, so like completely not participate in it. That's element 2. And the third element is that the entire concept of environment is a controversial one. So they've really transformed the entire, idea that you were coming off of. And this also means that you get the freedom and the privilege to make 3 entirely new points. So in a way, that's a good thing. Yeah. Anyway, you have a couple of minutes to put your ideas together. You don't have to do all 3. Choose one which speaks the most to you, and you can do that. Up to you. I'll give you a few minutes. All right, whoever is ready can get started.
Ma'am, I think I have 3 points for, I thought that I can write easily for against this statement. So I went for, so in favor. So one thing that I have is that we ourselves are the part of environment, and what we consume, we also, give back. Like we have many examples, oxygen and CO2, and animal and human waste being used in farmings. So this is something that can be taken. So second one is that environment,
So
since we,
wait. What is the point there? I didn't quite get the point.
so it meant that environment, we have something of that has been provided to us as a resource by nature, and we are using and we are consuming it, and we are also giving back. It's not
Okay.
there's something that I highlighted. And also in second point, I think I chose that since we consider environment as a resource, we were able to make some innovations, like develop medicines and technology in the later part of the stages. Like we had resources, but we utilized them in a proper way, and which even we used for curing highly infectious diseases like smallpox and chickenpox, which were at one time very they were not curable. So we used those resources that environment provided to us, and we used it judiciously. And third one would be raising the lifestyle of people. So I mean, I'm not very sure that I can make this a valid point, but all these things, when they combine together, they raise the lifestyle of the people
I mean,
in a
improve the
day-to-day life.
lifestyle.
Yeah.
Raise the standards of living.
Yes.
That's okay. Meant for consumption. I feel like you're very close to the points, but I'm afraid that you're not really hitting them on the head. Do you know what I mean? Let me explain. So the statement says environment is a resource meant for consumption, and you have to essentially say, I disagree, right? When you say that, let's take the last point because it's kind of a summative point anyway. So you're saying that us giving back and us leading to innovation, or us using innovation in a way to manage the environment utility better. What was the last part of your point? I'm sorry, I forget.
Last one was raising the lifestyle, and second one was innovation.
Yeah. So what my point is that I think we're kind of skirting around the point that you are not in agreement that that environment is a resource meant for consumption, because you're not really quite going against anything, right? You're just kind of giving a statement which can be true in both cases. So it's like a so what fact. Do you know what I mean?
Ma'am, I actually I'm not able to understand what you're trying to say here, because I mean, I use those three words: environment, a resource, and we use it as in consumption thing. So these three things, like innovation, and they came up when I thought it as a resource, and we are using it for our consumption, like curing diseases, and
you are agreeing with it.
Yeah, so I'm agreeing. That's why I had many points against for this, because we are not doing it judiciously. We are not doing it, taking care it very properly. So there's very mismanagement in the way we are handling the resources that environment is providing.
Now I get the point. Okay. Now I get the point. Now I can tell you exactly where we're kind of missing answering the question. Instead of saying that we are using environment but not doing it judiciously, what you actually have to say is that, no, I don't agree that environment is a resource meant for consumption. Does that clarify, or should I explain it further?
No, ma'am, I've given the statements in favor that that I agree that environment is something of a resource which is used for consumption. So these three are the validations of those that
Okay,
in
my
favor.
point still remains though, Gaurav. My point still remains, because if let's take the judiciously point, the point where you're saying that we're not doing it judiciously, you're agreeing with it, but you're not supporting it. And these are two different things. When you say environment is a resource meant for consumption and we're doing it judiciously, you're kind of giving an extension of that statement. But what you need to do is you need to support this by saying how. How is the environment a resource meant for consumption? That's not what I'm getting here. And similarly, how do you disagree that environment is not a resource meant for consumption? That's what you have to attack. Do you see?
Okay, yeah. I mean, I'm giving example rather than how
Yeah.
it is.
You're giving extensions of the argument, but you're not saying yes or no to the statement itself. So like I'll give you an example. Let's say if you're going for against environment is not a resource meant for consumption, I will say yes, it is not a resource meant for consumption. Nature in itself is a living organism and it is not meant for anybody. It is meant for just itself, which is why a natural cycle of a plant does not include us eating it. Yeah, the same thing applies to animals as well. So that is a direct attack on the statement.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I'm sorry if my cat is making noises and is making it through the camera. I apologize, but there is nothing I can do.
Ma'am, I had one point for environment is a resource meant for consumption.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Yeah, so an element of environment, that is water, is a resource meant for consumption as it enables us to lead a more hygienic life. I mean, I didn't know how to put this across, but like this was my main idea. The challenge that I noticed here was to put across it in a very sensible way, because when we talk about environment, usually we are more biased towards not consuming it, because we all get these thoughts related to global warming and that we should always protect the environment. So I had a very tough time to making phrases that would support this statement. And like I didn't know how do I highlight a particular segment of the environment and put it across. Like I was like, should I be like an element of environment, that is water, or like how do I justify that water is a part of environment?
Okay, that is a very good point, first of all, for, thanks for highlighting it, because that's exactly what I was starting to notice here. And that's why I chose to take this statement up, because it seems like it's deceptively simple, isn't it? Environment, I mean, who hasn't thought of the environment in the last 50 years or so? And it's a resource, it's meant for consumption. We all consume it one way or the other. So it's so simple, but it's actually really tricky, because so far what I'm seeing you guys do is you're extending the arguments further. You're starting to think about doing it or not doing it. But what you actually have to attack is the statement itself and say whether it is or it isn't meant for consumption. Okay, so coming back to your point, Akash, what you want to say is you're correct in saying that it's meant for consumption because there's water. But now, why do we consume it? Forget about hygiene. Why do humans consume water? Answer that.
Survival is the first thing.
There you are. That's your point. That if we are part of the environment, right, and there is water and we need water, it's not a want, it's a need, it's a requirement for humans to survive, then isn't 1 + 1 = 2? It's the most obvious thing, isn't it? Water is there for us to consume, so we consume it. And it's not just us, it's also humans, it's animals, it's organisms, every single thing. I'm not sure actually every single thing, because I don't know if amoeba needs water. But anyway, as a matter of speaking, most organisms, most living things require water, and environment has water. So how does that make sense scientifically? It makes sense because it is a resource meant for consumption. So that's how simple and direct you want to make this point.
Ma'am, so what would be the three main ideas? Like point number 1 is survival, and then we can, draft like several points related to it. But what would be the 2 other main ideas?
Let's think about it. That's why we're having the workshop. Let's all think about it. So do you want me to say one point? Okay, Smriti, I think has something.
Yeah, other than survival, we can say raising standard of living.
I mean, you can make it as a point, but I think the contest there would be that that's not a purpose of the environment, because you don't need to raise okay, first of all, let's fix that expression. It's not raise the standard of living, it's improve the standards of living. Yeah. So I mean, improvement in standards of living is not a requirement for survival. It's a want, right?
Yeah, it is not required for survival, but
I have 2
for
points,
environment.
but I
Sorry, one at a time. So let Smriti finish, and then
for environment as is a resource meant for consumption, we can take it a point like to improve standard of living.
Do you think that that's justified? Because it meant for consumption means that there is a purpose involved in that existence. Environment exists to be consumed. And you have to present points which directly support this idea that, yeah, see, because if this doesn't happen, that will not happen. So that's why environment is meant as a resource. But improving living standards is not exactly a purposeful idea when it comes to the environment. So I'm not really sure. I would not knock it. If you're running out of ideas, of course, use it, but I would still say keep digging. Okay, who else was speaking?
Yes, ma'am. I was saying there are 2 points, but I don't know whether they're in the right direction or not.
Let's hear them.
I am speaking in favor of that environment resources needs to be consumed. First one, the environment produces an abundance of many resources which gets consumed by the species that are part of the ecosystem. So when humans use these resources to fulfill their needs, it ensures that no wastage happens. Second, when we consume environmental resources, we allow more optimal diversion of these resources, such as water resources diverted to a land struck by sudden drought ensures sustenance of the people and organisms that reside there.
Very good. These are absolutely valid. Very well put. Good job, Reena.
I couldn't come up with any other point. So what to do in such a situation where you're not able to come up with another point to complete this whole. Yeah, I could not come up with a third point. Okay. So in such a situation, what should I do?
That's a tough one. I don't think there is anything to do except for, figure out one more point to say, even it's kind of a repetition.
More generic one.
Yeah, that's just pretty much my answer to that you're just going to have to write something in the third column.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Another way that you can say, another way that you can support the resource meant for consumption idea is to say that if you do not consume, the abundance in which the environment exists, then it's going to run amok, it's going to overtake,
that was one point that I wanted to put out, but I couldn't really put it into words.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, now you can.
Thank you.
Can we say ecological imbalance is the right word for that?
Sure, you can say that. Absolutely. Yes. That it can cause ecological imbalance or ecological excess. Yeah.
Ma'am, I had a doubt regarding this question.
Yeah.
For example, in one direction we are going where we are pointing out different things, like we say sustenance, then we say development and stuff like that. In the other sense of the thing, we are using water as an example and then expanding our thing on that point only. So which approach overall is better to use 2-3 points regarding the same, or we can expand we can take one thing of the environment and then expand on it?
I would say whichever is easier at the time, because as you can see, these things can be a little challenging. So don't assume that any statement that comes to you will give you these 2 options. It just happens so that we have these 2 options here, but not every statement will be open to, multiple interpretations. So I would say whatever is easier and more impactful, not just easier, but anything that gives you the freedom to create 3 independent points is the way to go.
Understood. Thank you.
Ma'am, also here the main challenge that I found myself facing with was a debate between necessity versus luxury. So for one point, like the survival point, it comes under necessity, and I was trying to generate more points on the lines of necessity, because I found that it would be very superficial if I would make more points on luxury, because that would be just like an extension to the main point.
Yeah, that's
That is-
want and need. Yeah.
For instance, I also had a point on reducing hardships, but then I was thinking, was it related to necessity or luxury? Because reduction in hardships would again be like, just making life easy, but that's not really a necessity. So I was like, how do I go about it?
Yeah, very good. That's exactly how you want to be asking these questions, that can I split it into the requirement and, desire? Yeah. Okay, anything else, anybody? So then can we move on to the 3 ways in which young professionals could stay off the environment controversy? It's good MICAT is making the right noises. What does that mean?
Mom, you just said a few minutes back that your cat is making noises. So I just want to know my cat. So
Oh
just
my God, that is such a good pun. Nailed it. Very good. I didn't get it at all. That is very funny. Thank you.
Ma'am, in this case, I had a difficulty understanding the question. Like, what exactly do they mean by environment controversy?
This controversy of whether it is a resource or not, whether we are being, selfish in using the environment for our benefits, or whether it's something that we just have to do because if there's water, we're going to drink it. So how do we stay away from this controversy? In fact, another way of answering this question is that they are assuming, in fact, not even assuming, they're declaring that environment, the whole topic, is a controversy. You have to accept it. Now tell us how young professionals will be able to avoid it effectively. Yeah, does that explain it?
So basically, young professionals should not engage in any public activities that states their stand on the issue of environment.
Yeah, that would be job 1.
So, ma'am, isn't that a very, I don't know. It seems like a question that needs some other sort of answers. And this answer that I gave seems so straightforward.
But it's not
Something so
wrong.
basic.
It's not wrong, right? It's correct. You're right.
So we would be required to write something like that.
Yeah, why not? Because the minute you say that this is a way in which young professionals can avoid the controversy of environment, you've answered the question. So you've done the job. Now you can just explain it very quickly.
Okay, so they should not be stating.
Yeah, go ahead. Keep going.
Their viewpoint about environment on social media.
Yeah,
or
there you are. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one point that came to my mind. Social media.
Ma'am, I had one point because I'm directly hitting the controversy part here.
Yes, please.
That young professionals, they should be aware about how sometimes environment is used as a to curb a country's to stop or hinder someone else country's development process, because they very well know that industrialization is a phase of development, and it should happen when the going from a phase from developing to developed nations. So they should be aware that more than they are trying to hinder the development, rather than they are focused more on environment, because they already the developed nation, they had gone through the same process and they are above,
so how are they? Your point is valid, but let's see if it's useful for the question. So how are the young professionals staying off the environment controversy in your point?
Yes, they should be aware and have more knowledge regarding this aspect, that this environment is being used as a tool.
Okay, good. So say it that succinctly is what I'm trying to show you. You know, you can use the rest of the stuff that you said as an explainer, but your point should be much more impactful and direct.
Yeah, my first point should be this to begin
Yeah,
with.
you should lead with that and then say, what do I mean? I mean this. Yeah.
Ma'am, I have 2 points actually, but I don't know if the second one is a valid point. Okay, so the first one is they should use public transport so that they are using the resources, but they are not abusing the resources.
Okay, can you say that? Can you reframe it and can you try and reframe it? Okay, just say it again. Let me see if I can reframe it.
They should use public transport so that even if they're using resources, they're at least using it judiciously. They're not abusing the resources.
So this is for the third part.
For the third part.
Okay, but in this third part, then you're trying to say that they should. That's actually a point for the. That's not a point for any of them. Actually, sorry, but you're giving an idea or a step that the young professionals can take to be better for the environment.
Yes, ma'am. So that will help them stay away from the controversy because nobody will question them for abusing the resources.
Are you sure?
I mean, that is the best possible way to avoid.
I think the best possible way to avoid is to keep your head down, stay low, and not say anything.
Yes, but then people who want to point will still come up and question.
Which is why we're not concerned with them. You see, remember that this is not a trick. They don't want you to explain absolutely everything in the world which relates to the environment. They want you to think about 3 ways in which young professionals could just, sort of get by without getting involved in the environment controversy. Okay, so you have to be very, very focused on that.
Yeah, I took it as what steps they should take so that
they don't become embroiled in the problem.
Yeah, so that they are not deteriorating the environment.
Yeah, no, that's not what they're asking. You see how different, how much of a difference it can make, just the misinterpretation of the statement, which is why I will again go back to the point that I made earlier, that pay close attention to the stem, pay close attention to your nouns and verbs, because they will impact the way you interpret and understand the statement. And it's very important that you get it right.
So ma'am, can we directly say a statement like staying off social media and not expressing your opinion when something like that is happening?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. So that was easy, I think. It wasn't like very difficult.
Yeah, you're doing this instead of doing this. No, you're doing this instead of doing this.
Yeah.
So what is another way that young professionals could, avoid getting embroiled into the whole environment controversy? One is, of course, don't participate in environment-led debates on social media. What else can you do? So instead of thinking into a void, you guys are all young professionals or students, think about the points in your life or times in your life when you automatically get involved in a controversy around the environment. When does that happen? And think about how you can avoid it.
Would it be repetitive if the next point is do not participate in public protests regarding climate and environment?
Not if you word it correctly, because social media, that doesn't have to do with anything, and you can just make this into a public forum thing.
Okay.
So yes, then that's the second point. Good.
Okay.
Yeah. You can also think about not wanting to or not participating or choosing not to participate in issues with green initiatives and CSR and, the little things that people do to stay green, live green. Think about
one more point could be.
Yeah.
Yeah. For example, I did a certification during my graduation, which was regarding environment only. So not having any certifications on their resume or
not doing it in the first place.
Yeah, exactly that. Not doing any certifications.
Yeah, not taking steps to not taking steps to let me think of the right word. I don't want to say, yeah, not taking steps to initiate themselves into the environment dialogue.
Okay.
Ma'am, I have one cross question.
Mhm.
That not participating in initiatives like CSR, I don't think that they are trying to say that. They are maybe they're trying to say that you stay away from the controversy, but you can do your part of
Yeah, sure. That is also another way of thinking about it. That is
Yeah.
not wrong.
Okay.
I was just giving you one aspect of it, that if you
Yeah,
want
yeah.
to, yeah,
Understand.
yeah, that you don't have to participate in the debate of it. You can just quietly do your thing. Yes. Okay, we're nearing the end of the workshop. Unless there are other points or perspectives that you'd like to share. Okay, hold on. Young professionals could put the onus on the companies, higher ups, rather than be embroiled in it. Yeah, yes. Good, that is a good way of thinking about it.
What does this statement mean?
The one that Doric has given.
Yeah, I couldn't understand it.
So instead of saying, oh, you know, we're sorry that we use so many printouts and things like that, you can say it's not our fault. Our managers ask us to get prints of everything, so we just have to do it. So ask them to go green and use emails instead.
Okay.
Mm. Okay, so does anybody have any questions about anything that we've discussed today? Are you clear on how to you know, engage with these questions? Are you clear?
Yeah, I wanted to ask, like
Yes.
I've forgotten what is the time limit for these 3 questions?
25 minutes.
25.
Not just these 3. There's also a short story which is coming in the next workshop. And for the
Okay.
entire thing, you will have 25 minutes.
Okay. Yeah.
So which also gives you a clear idea of how much time you want to spend on these points, which takes us back to our last point, our last discussion on how much to write for each of the points. So you will really just have time to write the opinion or the argument and then one explainer and move on to the next one. Otherwise, you'll just end up spending too much time on it. Okay.
And the next one we'll have on 18th. Like what is?
I think it's going to be on Wednesday.
Okay.
16, 17, 18. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Yeah, that's it. Has Massey announced it on the groups?
Yeah, he had given 2 dates, I think. 14th
Yeah.
and
So then that's
18th.
it. Yes, it's Wednesday, but I'll make it evening because I think in the morning people were not free, and I ended up having 2 people, and and then we ended up rescheduling for the evening.
Yeah, ma'am. Working as well.
Yes, no, I realize that. I think we'll have a 7 to 9 again. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for attending. Thank you for participating and giving your ideas and opinions. It was really fun. I hope that we were able to crack on as much as was possible for this sort of a section. And if you have any questions, of course, feel free to reach out to me in one of the groups that I'm a part of on Telegram. And I will see you once again, me and my cat, on the 18th at 7 p.m. with just the section on the short story. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. This was very informative.
Thank you. Have a good evening. I'll see you guys soon.
Thank you, Mom. See you.
Bye-bye.